This is Michael Delane of the Copenhagen Voice. I am at the Danish Institute of International Studies on a short meeting about the nuclear-free zone in the Arctic. With me is Michael Hamel-Green, an associate professor at Victoria University. And Michael, can you tell me what the status difference is between the Arctic and the Antarctic?
Well, the Antarctic Treaty for since 1959 has established a totally denuclearized and demilitarized zone, which has also promoted scientific cooperation and has protected the whole Antarctic environment from any nuclear testing, any nuclear presence, any military presence, and created the opportunity for scientific cooperation that led to such breakthroughs as identifying the ozone layer, which has benefited the whole world. The Arctic, on the other hand, there's been no such agreement, and it's been there are some environmental cooperation, but it's not non-binding, and we're now facing a situation where the major powers around the Arctic are increasing or proposing to increase their military presence. There's always been strategic submarines, there's been nuclear testing, there's been nuclear accidents, there's been a whole lot of, and there's pollution problems, there's a whole lot of range of problems that had there been a treaty earlier on could have been resolved cooperatively. So I think right now is the time when we can have a rethink about whether a treaty is needed, a binding treaty that would lock in all the Arctic Council states into protecting the environment, into denuclearizing the region. To me, it makes some sense for Russia and America to have a buffer zone between themselves, apart from anything else. But in order to get the kind of cooperation going to make sure that any economic exploitation of the Arctic Ocean and the resources there doesn't either lead to military conflict or doesn't lead to environmental pollution, it's absolutely vital that we have a binding treaty. An Arctic treaty would include denuclearization provisions or separate treaties. One might be a nuclear-free zone treaty, and others might be Arctic treaty more generally. But there has to be some movement now. I think the states that came together to protect Antarctica, which included Russia and America, that they had the vision then, and what's needed is the same vision now to achieve an Arctic nuclear weapons zone.
Do you think that the time is right now where we have climate problems, global warming, melting ice on Greenland and the Arctic generally? Is that a good time to carry out such?
Absolutely. I think what's happening now is a worldwide understanding about the threats posed by climate change, and particularly the threats posed by the potential melting of the Greenland ice cap and the seasonal melting of the Arctic Ocean ice. That they could have disastrous impacts, and so I think there's a focus now on the role of the Arctic in the climate change, and that will concentrate the leaders' minds on the fact that we need to get really effective cooperation, and you can't get that unless you have binding treaties. That was the real contribution of the Antarctic Treaty, and it spawned a whole lot of other agreements. It spawned incredible cooperation between all the powers in terms of scientific work and some of the scientific work required in the Arctic and to manage environmental problems can't be done by any single nation. It needs the cooperation between nations.
But you also have at the moment nations making territorial claims in the Arctic region, presumably because there are raw materials, oil or whatever in the underground.
Well, we do have the law of the sea in terms of trying to arbitrate disputes about the exploitation of exclusive economic zones and the continental shelves. But I think the interesting thing about the model provided by the Antarctic Treaty is that countries were prepared to set aside their territorial claims in the interest of a cooperative arrangement that has had tremendous benefits for the Antarctic, and that is what is needed here.
But that will take a lot of courage for political leaders.
It will, but we are at a new juncture with the Obama administration, a Democrat-controlled Congress, a willingness to look at multilateral solutions. I think the preemptive strategies of the previous Bush administration, goes along alone, use military methods only. I think people are realising that's not the solution. They've seen the problems caused by unilateral military interventions, and I think it is a bit alarming at the moment. You have Denmark, Canada, US, Norway all talking about enhancing their military presence in the Arctic when you could be having a greater coming together about ways in which they can cooperate in and developing binding agreements that will lock them all in and produce that cooperation.
What was the background for the Antarctic nuclear-free zone?
The background for the Antarctic Treaty was the International Year of Geophysical Cooperation. I haven't quite got the name of it correctly, but International Geophysical Year established by the UN. I think it was the third such year. And at the same time, it was at the height of the Cold War, when both Russia and America, Soviet Union and America, were concerned to deny each other the Antarctic as a base for putting any nuclear weapons or having a nuclear presence. And the other aspect of Antarctica was to defuse conflicts over territorial claims, because there were competing claims, and what the Antarctic Treaty did was to freeze those claims. So they defused that whole issue, and that's what you need now, a defusing of the territorial claims within the Arctic. I mean, the actual claims based on land are quite clear-cut, but it's when you get into the Arctic Ocean that you can get conflicting claims, and indeed you have conflicting claims.
How long do you think it will take for negotiations, if they ever start, to be concluded?
Given that we're at a new juncture now where there's an openness and a greater understanding of the need for multilateral initiatives. I mean, the Antarctic Treaty only took about 19 months. It was amazingly brief. Where there's a political will, you can have these things happen quickly. On the other hand, if there's not an immediate consensus, then a group of nations, the Nordic nations and plus Canada, could start an initiative themselves and then draw in the Arctic territories of Russia and America through subsequent protocols. It may take some time to do that, but to establish the goal and the vision and to agree amongst themselves about their Arctic territories would be a great first step.
You seem to think that Obama will be positive, perhaps more positive than Bush. What about Russian politicians?
Well, I mean, there was the Murmansk initiative of Gorbachev, which seemed to me to indicate a preparedness to look at the Arctic Ocean as a zone of peace and preparedness to have some bilateral agreements with America. And I think it would be in the interest of both Russia and America to establish some sort of buffer zone between themselves. And with the Arctic ice disappearing, you're not going to be able to conceal submarines under the ice anymore. I mean, it's to me that it makes a lot of sense for both Russia and America to agree to a concept like this.
So you're optimistic that there will be a treaty at some stage?
I think it's a matter of having some leaders who are prepared to be visionary about this, and as well as the grassroots pressures that can bring about such a treaty. I think it needs to become a public issue in all the communities of the Arctic countries.
Okay. Michael Hamel-Green, thank you very much indeed.
That's okay. Oops.